friends, welcome to the Three Pillars podcast with your host Griselda Barreto. Aviation. Today's guest is Captain Willem Felderhof. Willem is a former commercial airline pilot from the Netherlands. Willem always had a fascination for aviation since the time he was a little kid. The fulfillment of his dream to become an airline pilot came into manifestation when he started his training at the National School of Aviation in the Netherlands. Before that, he served as a green beret in the special forces of the Dutch Army and had several jobs in commerce. Before his career as an airline pilot, his physical health was outstanding, also because of the intense and different sporting activities during his youth. When he finished his initial flight training in 1991 with success, he started as a co-pilot in small aviation on the Dornier 228. 2 years later, he joined Transavia Airlines, where he operated as a co-pilot on the Boeing 737-300 and 400 series aircraft. In 1995, he was hired by KLM, where he continued his flying career as a co-pilot on the MD-11. After 19 years, he left the MD-11 division and started his training for captain on the Boeing 737. Due to his severely deteriorating health condition, he had to quit his job as a pilot completely in 2014 with more than 10,000 flight hours. At this moment, Willem does not board any airplane anymore, also not as a passenger, and he is trying to recover from aerotoxic syndrome. His first health issues started roughly after 4 years of flying, with migraines, loss of energy, sleeping disorders, and emotional stress. He was diagnosed with burnout by the airline's health department, first in 2001 and then again in 2003. During this period, he tried to recover from his condition by changing his life drastically on all levels. It took him 8 years to come to the definite conclusion that the increasing deteriorating health condition, despite the radical shifts in his life, was caused not by him but the result of something in the airplanes. Although he had strong suspicions that there was something wrong with the air supply, he had no idea what this exactly could be. When he came in contact with people that had knowledge of aerotoxic syndrome, he started to take samples of the air, his blood and urine, and tested these on the presence of organophosphates, in particular TCPs and its affiliated isomers. All the tests were positive, and from then on his battle against the airline and the industry started, which resulted in a big lawsuit in 2013. The mainstream media labeled him from that moment the toxic pilot. Hi, Willem. Welcome to the Three Pillars podcast. I'm so happy to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Griselda. I'm doing fine. It's good to be here and it's good to connect with you. I'm happy that we met. So, I'm ready for it.
Okay, good. Before we go into our conversation, can I ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, I'm from Holland originally. I live in France now since 14 years, but I'm often still in Holland. But I'm originally from Holland, and I'm a former commercial airline pilot. I flew for 25 years almost. My career. I've always was fascinated by aviation as a little boy always, so it has always been a big part of my life. That was actually the only thing which I was really fascinated by, and my dream was there. So when I finally was able to do the School of Aviation in Holland, I could start my career. I started quite late. I was 23 years when I started to go to the School of Aviation, but from that, it was in 1990. And then I joined the School of Aviation, and from there on, I started my career, which ended in 2014 as a result of my condition, so-called aerotoxic syndrome, what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Tell me how you were before you actually started suffering from aerotoxic syndrome. I just need to know your health and your life, and what were you doing before you were 23? Did you have another job, or just let us know something more on that?
Yes, well, I went to school. I was when I was young. I was very active and athletic, sportive,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have computers and all that stuff. So I was very much on doing different kind of sports. So my condition was very good actually, and that resulted also in my joining in the army of the Green Berets of the Special Forces in Holland.
Wow.
Well, so that's an indication that my physical condition was top actually.
Mm.
So, and then after my army time, that was in 1985, I started doing different jobs because I couldn't go to the other school of aviation in the north of Holland.
Mm-hmm.
So I first started to try all kinds of different jobs in the commercial field,
Mm-hmm.
which is not my kind of area actually. But my condition was quite good, although I didn't live very healthy after I left the army. My diet and way of living was not very healthy, but I had a really good basic condition. Physical and mental health was really good. Of course, that needs to be when you go to the School of Aviation, because the selection criteria are quite tough for that. So when I started flying, I was in really good shape.
Hmm. So how did you get sick?
Well, first of all, when I started in the School of Aviation, I was not exposed to toxic air, so my health was overall okay. I had a lot of stress because I had quite some turbulent private life, if you want to call it like that. People dying, quite some stress, some divorce and things like that, financial stress, all these kinds of things. But when I was flying, of course, that was where my heart lied. So in that sense, that didn't give me stress at all. I felt really at ease when I was flying. That's my core quality. Also, that's the only thing I can do well, if you want to call it like that.
Yeah.
But so in the beginning, I didn't have really health problems. These health issues really started to manifest when I joined big airliners. That was first I flew with Transavia. That's the low budget, probably. Transavia Airlines.
Yeah.
And that's before that was a small aviation, which already made use of bleed air system. But then Transavia, that was in 1992. And the first 3 years I flew the 737 was all sort of okay. And then I switched to KLM Air France. And then it was in 2000 that I started to develop neurological problems. And these manifested in the beginning as migraines.
Yeah.
So that was the first, and I never had migraines before in my life, never had headaches or migraines or these kinds of things. The migraines I experienced were not really the kind of migraines, but more neurologic, not with severe headaches, but more with visuals, with the aura, tinting in the visual field. So, but I didn't relate it, of course, to my work, because what I said, I had also stressful aspects when I was flying in that period. So when I went to the doctor, because that's what you do, of course.
Yeah. And
then he said, well, you probably have a burnout, because I started then more problems, health conditions, health indications, health deterioration started to emerge, like fatigue or concentration problems, sort of, temperature changes in the body, rushes, these kinds of things. But I didn't relate it to things at my work. I was at a certain moment, I was diagnosed with a burnout.
And did you feel very stressed at that point? Did you probably think that maybe it's because of all the, the stress that I have in my life that I'm going through these symptoms?
Yes. Well, in the beginning, I also experienced during flying, I experienced certain neurological problems, visual, with my vision, for instance, that I thought, hey, this is weird. This is not like stress. These were certain symptoms which I couldn't really place at that time. So, but I still didn't relate to my work, of course.
Yeah.
I was thinking about maybe it's diet or whatever. I was thinking about everything, but not to some components at my work in the beginning.
And how did you manage to fly then? Were you not scared at a certain point that, you're not completely fit, but you still were flying at that point? So what was going through your mind when you had to operate a flight in your uniform and, you're supposed to be 100% focused and things like that? So how did you feel at that point? Was it a show? How did you manage?
Well, I'm quite capable of just continuing with pain and with certain things in my system and then just do the job. So I think I have quite a high limit of performance despite certain limitations, physical, mental, or emotional, maybe because of my past. But there is another thing also, which I think is very how do you call it, familiar to a lot of people, because I thought it's part of the job. I thought sometimes I was not the only one feeling very groggy, or I was sitting sometimes in a certain state in the cockpit that I thought this is just part of the job, with time differences, night flying, and all these kinds of things. And colleagues were also sort of complaining, or that it was bad air, that was sometimes that was mentioned, that the air was dry, or these kinds of things. So some things, it's so difficult, but I thought this is also, it comes with the job.
It's normal.
Yeah, it's normal. So you take it for granted because it's part of the flying. Yeah, that comes with it, sort of. It's sort of accepted that you have some medical, conditions, or certain, these headaches, or tired, extremely tired, or, these kinds of things are just accepted by people who fly often, because they think that's just normal, because we make strange working hours, and flying itself with the air, and then the radiation, electromagnetic radiation, or these kinds of things are then taken into account, and you think, that's part of it, and we become older, so you forget more. It's not immediately linked to other aspects.
Yeah. Actually, many times I remember when I flew, we always would complain and say, oh, we're getting older. This is part of life. But we were still young.
Exactly.
But you still think, oh my God, I'm getting older. So going back to when you were flying, did you actually experience a fume event or events? Or was there any flight where you had this kind of foggy cabin?
No, not in that sense. I never have reported a fume event, but I have flown in conditions, certain aircraft which were operated by the airline were structural fume events, but not in the sense that you see the fumes, but in the sense that the air is very toxic. But because that manifests then itself with a lot of people fainting, a lot of passengers with headaches, or losing consciousness, or dizziness, or people and then you arrive on destination completely groggy with the whole crew. That I know after a certain period, I knew, hey, this is just a structural fume event, this one, if you fly with this registration, but it's labeled by colleagues. Oh, this is a bad one. In that sense, this is just a bad one with bad air or recirculation. Then you need to, these kinds of.
So you mean they blame the aircraft? They blame the aircraft, the registration. They say, like, if you have an aircraft, let's say the Victor Echo Foxtrot, and they say, oh, whenever you fly on the Foxtrot, that's the one where the ventilation is not good, or the circulation of the air in the cabin is not good. Is that what you mean? That they blame the aircraft?
Yes. Yeah.
More than the problem, yeah.
Yeah, they don't link that to. Maybe now they do. Nowadays it's different, but back then people or colleagues or we just said, well, this is a bad one, and then they were relating to bad air or less oxygen or dry air or these kinds of things, not to toxicity.
Yeah. So you had actually taken part in a program on TV called Zembla. Can you tell us about how you actually, got on that show and your journey through this Zembla? Because I believe you're called the Zembla pilot, but if you can tell our listeners what it means.
Well, Zembla is a documentary producing channel in Holland. So it's a small group, and they do all kinds of different subjects. And the air toxic syndrome, toxic air in aviation is one of the main pillars of them, because they have a personal affection with it due to the people they met or whatever. So in the beginning, I saw the first documentary. I was not involved with it directly. Later on, because I realized I came more to the conclusion that I was being exposed to this toxic air, because all my research and all my findings, the test I did, the air test, the blood test, all the tests were positive on the presence of these organophosphates. Then I was still in the airline, so I could not take part in documentaries because that's not allowed in the company. You're not allowed to speak with the media. So in the first 3 episodes, it was not about me. It was sort of mentioned, but not by name, anything. And I wasn't in it. But the last one they produced was a 2-part, one about my case, and the other one was about the international aspects of the air toxic syndrome, with lawsuits by crew members of Ryanair, I think, or EasyJet. But one of the episodes was about my case, specifically about my case. So maybe that's why I didn't know actually that they called me the Zembla pilot.
Yeah, whenever you've come up in conversations, they always talk about the Zembla pilot, and I'm like, okay, what is that? And now I understand. Now now that you explained. So when they actually introduced you in the series, like the fourth episode, did they actually follow you on the aircraft and, see what you were going through?
No, I was then, because I made a video diary. I myself made a video diary during this whole period. Me again flying and again being affected and getting sick again. Yeah. So before, during, and after flying, and I thought I was dying because in that time I was going into the intensive care units and in and out hospitals. Emergency department, whatever. I thought I take a video diary. So in case I die, then you can send that to the media, and then maybe they will admit it. They have to admit it. But it was was more that was the reason why I recorded it. But Semla was not involved in it at all back then.
Yeah. Wow, it must have been quite scary if you were actually thinking that you were going to die. So you had many more symptoms which were quite serious that made you think that you were going to die. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, my nervous system was severely affected by this, of course. I'm in this sort of group of so-called, I'm not this bad detoxifier because they get really problems immediately almost after starting to fly. I'm in between bad and medium, I think, due to my enzyme constitution. But so my nervous system was heavily affected by it. So my everything autonomic as well. So breathing during the night, I had apnea. Is that the word in English? Apnea?
Sleep apnea.
Yeah, that's for instance. So that's quite scary. Severe apnea, and then also heart rhythm disorders.
Heart palpitations.
Yeah, heart palpitations, but and gut issues, which are chronic now. After a certain period, they became chronic. In the beginning, I didn't really relate it to organophosphates, and it was not so chronic after. But at a certain stage, it was just always there, these gut issues. So that and severe vertigo attacks, that was very unpleasant. So these vertigo, that my whole sense of reality, I couldn't fell apart. These vertigo attacks.
But pilots generally they're quite strict about their medicals. So how did you manage to pass the medicals, or did you mention it to the airline, to the doctors that what you were feeling, and what was their advice to you then? And did they still let you fly after that?
Well, I didn't mention at all, of course, because then you're grounded, and that's what you don't want as a pilot. So you try to work with it. So I had a restriction in my license that I could not fly without a qualified copilot because of the migraine. They always labeled the airline always labeled it migraine. That's it. They didn't go at a certain stage.
Further.
No, but at a certain stage, I had so much evidence that I presented this as this evidence and also my symptoms. But that was when we were really just opposite each other. We ended up in this battle that the company says, no, you're not getting sick because of this. And I said, well, I have evidence. But before that, and the medical tests are now not so difficult anymore. The medical tests today are nothing compared to what it was before. So it's not so difficult to pass the medical test.
So where are you now with your recovery process?
Well, I'm still working on my health because now I'm not flying anymore. I'm not flying also not as a passenger anymore, which is quite surrealistic because that's what I always wanted to do and what I did. And now I cannot even as a passenger anymore in the plane. But so I'm working on my health, and it's a daily effort because, as a result of the whole aerotoxic syndrome, the whole aerotoxic I'm also electrosensitive. So that makes it difficult. So I get strong reactions with electromagnetic exposure. But also food, the diet is a huge thing. So sometimes I react very strong. I still have autoimmune disorders. So these autoimmune reactions, inflammatory state, that is quite intense, especially during the night, because I had to have this detoxification metabolism problem in the second phase of the metabolism. So that's during the night often when the liver goes to work, and then I wake up with the immune reactions. That's still there, but I'm improving overall. If you see where I was like 4 years ago, I feel much better, but still I'm never nowhere where I need or want to be. I'm surprised still that my body can cope with the whole thing, but I'm still recovering and trying to work on the diet and do the right things. What I also did during the flying at a certain stage, I started to meditate, but serious meditation. So I was meditating at least 2-3 hours a day. All the free time I was spending in meditation centers, meditating 10-11 hours a day. And in holidays and whenever I could, I was meditating during long times actually. And that was for me, what saved me for my nervous system was the best medicine.
So it did help you. It was a big help, meditation.
Yes, serious meditation is a very good medicine for the nervous system, the nervus vagus, and anything in the body. So
Yeah. So since you are talking about meditation, are there ways of healing or alternative ways of healing?
yes, well, I follow for my. Of course, everybody needs a different approach. For same as aerotoxic manifests in different ways with different persons. Everybody has a unique constitution. Same with the Ayurvedic approach. So you need different approach. Same for the healing. Same for detoxing. Certain things I'm more sensitive to than other people. But of course, we're all sensitive to organophosphates, more or less. But the detoxing is a very important thing. And I contacted an orthomolecular approach, orthomolecular doctors.
Yeah.
That's orthomolecular. It's also in English, is it? The word.
Yes. So, yeah. Orthomolecular doctors. Yeah.
Yeah, I got in contact via Michel Mulder back then with an orthomolecular doctor, and he helped quite some crew back in their job who could continue for a few years again before they were just completely grounded and couldn't do anything, were in bed, and some were almost in hospital. And then after a few weeks with this orthomolecular approach, they could fly again. Not in my case, but it helped me also. So a good supplement diet, which is based on my constitution with certain neurotransmitters, certain, GABA and all these different kind of neurotransmitters which I needed. I had a big help with supplement diet and orthomolecular doctors, other than the neurologists I saw, the mainstream hospital medical allopathic field, because they don't know what it is. They don't help you really.
Yeah, and there are more toxins into your body when you actually take other medication that is prescribed to you.
Yeah.
So many people feel more comfortable going the non-traditional way or going the herbal way, and like you said, Ayurvedic and things like that. So I understand. I also know from your website that you have a body oneness practice. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, body oneness is based on the French technique. I did quite some healing work before then already. I was always interested in, because when I was younger, I had fear disorders and things like that, psychological things in a sense, and I was looking for healing. So I came into the alternative field and started doing retreats and all kinds of different approaches and also courses, because I was very much interested in it, and I sensed that I also could help people. So at a certain moment, I started doing healing work on other people. So next to the flying, I had a sort of practice where I was treating people with different work, breath work, or sort of physical techniques. And body oneness is based on the French techniques, l'unité du corps, which means body oneness in English. And it's an energetic physical healing treatment method. And then I incorporated in a whole sort of different approach for different people, but that resulted in the website where I started to do healing on people. But at a certain stage, because of my own condition was so bad, I stopped doing it. So I couldn't work on other people because I was myself in such a bad shape, and I needed to find and understand what was happening in me. So I stopped for a certain period, but now I picked it up again. And one of the things I do is the use of kambo, which is South American Ecuadorian medicine. It's from a frog. It's from an Ecuadorian tree frog, and that is a secretion of this frog, which I took myself during that period for quite some time, and it helped me a lot because it's a major detoxing and boost for the immune system. So that's really a powerful medicine to try out or to look into.
And what does it taste? Awful?
Well, yeah, it's quite brutal in the sense that it's a sort of shamanic treatment. So it's done in a shamanic or in a ceremony setting, but you take it on and you put it on the skin, and then you make some burning spots, and then the secretion goes directly in the lymph system, and that triggers the immune system. But the kambo itself it has 9 bioactive peptides which go through the blood-brain barrier, and besides that, you become very sick, and then you vomit. You drink 2 liters of water, and all the toxins are then dumped into the intestinal part and in the stomach, and then you vomit. You get a purge, which is a huge cleansing on physical, emotional, mental level, and it produces all kinds of also white blood cells. Yeah. On the website is also if you there's combo journey and it's all described. There's a description of what it is and what it does and what purpose. So and at a certain
Mm.
moment I started to work with it on people also because hey this person could maybe benefit from it. So I started to work with
Yeah.
that as well.
This is amazing. So, I would like to call you back on another show of mine because I have the three pillars. My show is based on aviation and self help as well. So, I'd like to have you back on at a later date if you have the time. So, we really speak about this treatment that you have, this body oneness treatment, and, go more into detail about this aspect to help people out there if they are interested in something alternative.
Yes, let's do that. Great. It's always good to speak about
Okay,
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's getting back to aerotoxic syndrome. What are your thoughts and feelings now about the sickness?
Well, it's a very nefarious. The whole thing, of course, is very nefarious in the sense that this shouldn't be there. This shouldn't be. It's just wrong. It's immoral, especially because
Mm,
the aviation industry is very aware of it, and especially all these doctors who work in the industry for these airlines. They just keep people in the dark and do not inform all these people with their suffering who trust them and pin hope on these doctors, and they are aware of the problem, but they don't mention it. They ignore it. So it has an
mm,
evil aspect, but besides the substance itself, what it does, this nerve gas, it's a warfare agent. So we're breathing in warfare agents, which is insane. Of course, it shouldn't be there.
mm.
There should be no exposure limit for nerve gas in aviation. That's ridiculous. So, but I'm sort of optimistic because there is a lot of momentum now. I mean, people like you, the work you do, and also this in the UK, you have now lawsuits really starting to come. So yeah, that's these are good indications. But of course, the industry is very powerful and the system is very
Mm,
corrupt. So and you have to fight it within the system if you want to start lawsuits and so on. Seen it myself when I started this lawsuit.
mm.
You can only do that once because yeah, you go you won't win in the end. So I had to
Yeah,
step back
and
and
it's expensive.
it's very expensive. I had close to 100,000 euros lawyer costs, and at the same time,
Mm,
you're in a deplorable state. So you're tired, and they stopped my salary, so I didn't have money, and then you have to go to court. And
mm,
then I was lucky that I had a sort of independent judge, but I
mm,
had to go back for the second round actually. But they had put everything in place back then, their lawyers and
mm.
their judges, and so that would have become more difficult even. So it's a very difficult process.
So, Willem, you've had quite a difficult journey, a lot of struggles. What has been the most difficult part of this entire journey?
Well, the most difficult part, of course, is physically the health and the symptoms of being exposed to nerve gas is really something else. I mean, I'm used to pain and physical challenges, but nerve gas, the neurological effects of this exposure to organophosphates, this was like really coming from somewhere else almost. So that was difficult, and it took a long time, the whole journey. And in the beginning, you cannot talk about it you cannot share it with a lot of people, because most of the people also in family and friends, they think that you're sort of crazy, that you make it up in your mind, because what I said in the beginning, I was, I was not living very healthy. I was partying and I was living the good life, and then these complaints started to come. So that people said, "Well, you live not healthy or whatever." They don't think that. So that causes this sort of loneliness in this whole journey. And so these were the two difficult parts, I think, from the whole thing. But it's still a struggle. It's physically very tough if you are being exposed to this stuff, and the things you have to go through then. And then hospital in, hospital out, and also the doctors in the mainstream allopathic industry, medical industry, they don't really know much about the nervous system, how it works, and also the effects of exposure to organophosphates and neurotoxins, and the whole metabolism and the effects on it, and the whole dynamics. So you go in and out hospital. I went in and out of hospitals, and they do scans, and then they don't find anything, and then so that took years. So it was a big relief when I finally met with people who were known in this field, and then I could start to do samples, and these were positive. But it took 10 years before I got in contact with these people, and I could really come up with evidence that it was not me who was crazy or whatever, that there was something else.
Yeah, crazy. So, what would your advice be to the younger generation of pilots and cabin crew or passengers?
Well, I would say to people who, who just going to start flying. Another thing, just what also is very difficult is that there is a lot of overlap. That's another thing what is good to mention because a lot of people and cabin crew, and I noticed after the Zembla episode that I was contacted by a lot of crew members who recognized themselves sitting in their hotel room desperate, in despair almost with these conditions and don't know what's happening and are alone in that. So that was also one of the reasons why I didn't really mind that video diary was on television, although I didn't like it. But a lot of people recognized themselves in it. So that was a good thing. Because that's another thing which is very difficult. There's so much overlap because it causes also distress in your private life, and that goes hand in hand, and then you get misdiagnosed. So it makes it very difficult. But I would say very important to speak out about it. And if you have any suspicions that you are having symptoms because as a result of this exposure to organophosphate, immediately report it to your doctor, your health officers in the company. If they have an own health department, then because then they have to put it in your medical file, and that's very important. And you can build up a file. They're obligated to do that. So if you say I have strong suspicions that I have health issues as a result of this exposure to neurotoxins, which are there because it is there. That's admitted by the industry. So then they have to put it in a file. That's an important thing. And do testing. You can do this DNA analyze and see if you are more susceptible for it, if you're more affected by it because of the certain enzyme mutations. You can have an analyze and do that before you start a career. If you're in that phase, I would definitely start with doing that. And if it appears that you are in this group of so-called bad detoxifiers, then I would seriously consider it not to start a career in aviation, because then you're bound for this suffering. And being affected by it. So those are just some things you could do. And on the side, you can contact orthomolecular doctors who are known in this field, and then build your immune system while you're flying. Keep it strong with supplement diets specifically aimed for the needs, for the individual needs. You can do that. That's also a good thing. And detox on the way. Keep detoxing and live healthy, or stop flying, of course.
Yeah. Very good information. Yeah, that's true. Is there any more information you'd like to share with the listeners? I remember you had told me something about masks.
Yes, I just recently I was in contact with Angel, and she came up with this mask. She uses this mask because I saw that DVD unfiltered. What is
Unfiltered
what is
breathing in.
Yes, there you have this image with a mask. So I asked her, hey, what is it about that mask? And she said, well, there's this company that's respro.com, I think, and they produce all kinds of different masks. And one of them, I ordered one of them, and they are really great. So if you're flying or you're working in the aviation, it's always good to have it with you. Also, when you're on an airport or when there's a lot of smog, the air is bad. But also, if you happen to be in a fume event, then it's always good to have such a mask with you. And it was amazing, the effects. It's a very good quality mask, and they're not so expensive. So you can look up that's respro.com, I think, by heart.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll put that respro.com. I'll put it in the description of the episode. So if the listeners want to go and buy one, they can actually do that. So that's great. Well, how about if the listeners want to contact you? How can they actually reach you?
Well, they can. The easiest way is to contact me via my website. That's bodyoneness.nl. That's my website. And if they send me an email via the website or contact me, then we set up a contact, and then from there we can always see what I can do, or we can have a talk or a chat or whatever. And I can. That's the best way to contact me via my website, bodyoneness.nl.
Okay, that's great. I was just thinking that you mentioned those masks. I think it would be a good investment even for the aviation industry to actually invest in these masks and place them like how they place the life jackets under the seat, just as a precautionary measure. So if ever there is an emergency or smoke in the cabin or these toxic fumes, that the passengers at least have the opportunity of taking this mask and protecting themselves, at least till the aircraft lands.
Yeah, and maybe if people look into it, then you have to do it via the union, of course, because the airlines itself, they won't do that probably. because then they would admit it or whatever reasons. But the union would be might be interested in this for their staff or certain people. This will be a good thing for also health departments, of the aviation. But so yeah, that is a good thing. And people can also go to this. You have these groups, this air toxic groups on social media. That's also good place, and then you can look in the forums and in the discussions, and then you can find maybe some stories of people, and then you recognize something in it, and you can contact people. It's very helpful to connect with people and to be able to just express your feelings and what your experiencing, because most people who do not fly, they don't understand that, or so, and it's very healing. It has a healing aspect, definitely, if you can connect with people who understand you and can hear you. So these social media forums, which there are now quite a few, so that's also a good thing to do.
Yeah, and this talk as well, because I really want to thank you very much, Willem, for sharing all the information that you gave us today. You're inspirational. I mean, your entire story, your struggle, your fight, and you're still fighting. It's really motivational. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Okay, Griselda, you too. Thank you for having me, and thanks for all your amazing work. By the way, checked your all your book work. It's amazing. In fact, all those people who work in the airline business. I mean, most people work from their heart and they do what they love most. That makes it all even more insidious. So take care as well. Thank you for
Yeah.
everything.
Thank you, Willem. Take care and hope to speak to you soon.
Yes, let's do that. Look forward.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining the Three Pillars. See you next week.